right, everybody, welcome in to another episode of the NFL Seekers podcast. Today, we are going to be deep diving into the NFC West. We'll be talking about each team's offseason, their starting lineups, and at the end, we're going to predict the division winner and all the award winners for the NFC West. So, how are you, Josh? You excited to talk about the NFC West?
Yeah, the NFC West is an interesting division. I feel like it's kind of choppy, and there's one superpower team, and then the rest are just kind of one other team's kind of there, and then the rest are just not there. But this is an interesting division. We got definitely two of them are at the top, two of them are at the bottom. And it's going to be interesting. I mean, I'd like them to surprise us. Some of these teams that we're going to start talking about, the ones who are lower on our list. But I mean, it's interesting. It's an interesting division. I'm excited to talk about it.
Yeah, I mean, with that, we'll just get right into the 2022 recap. And like you said, it's a hilariously unbalanced division. You have the 49ers and Seahawks were the two best teams, honestly, in the NFL last year. And the Rams and Cardinals were definitely the two.
Yeah, at the bottom tier.
And this year, especially, they're going to be even worse, possibly. We'll get into that soon. But yeah, the 49ers finished 13-4, finished first in the division. And then the Seahawks finished 9-8, finished second. And the Niners dominated the Seahawks in that wild card round of the playoffs. It was a little embarrassing. I thought it would be a little bit closer for a divisional matchup. The Rams finished third at 5-12, and then the Cardinals finished at 4-13.
Yeah, crazy. Yeah. I mean, literally, it feels like the 49ers are just the super power, and then these other guys are just all chasing them. It's just funny. But Seahawks, I think the Seahawks could be close this year, but we'll see.
Yep. And then with that, we will deep dive into the Arizona Calebs. I mean Cardinals, who honestly, it could be the Arizona Calebs because this roster, as you guys will see very soon, is looking very, very rough. I mean, let's just not kid ourselves. They could have the worst roster in the NFL. Definitely could have the worst defense in the NFL, and they have a really good chance at the first overall pick. And I want to ask you, in the scenario that they do get the first overall pick, are they gonna Josh Rosen Kyler? Are they gonna give Kyler the karma, and are they just gonna trade him away and take Caleb?
Oh gosh. Yeah, that's such a tough question. Gosh, I feel like there's Caleb Williams coming out of in college right now, and Kyler Williams, or can't even talk. I got these two. They're like they remind me of the same player.
Mm-hmm.
So Kyler Murray coming out of college reminds me exactly of Caleb Williams. Just kind of that. I mean, I feel like Caleb Williams is maybe a little bit better of a prospect, a little bit cleaner of a passer, but they're just the way they play the game of football just is so oddly similar. They're these smaller dudes that run around for their lives and are able to make these fantastic plays. But I don't know. I just feel like their skill set is too similar to really want to move off of Kyler. And I think Kyler gets too much unnecessary hate and unnecessary drama towards him. Like, I feel like Kyler Murray's kind of put this team on his back the last couple of years. I don't feel like the team around him has done him any favors at all. So I kind of blame the team and not Kyler Murray. But if I was the Cardinals, I would ride with Kyler Murray. I think in my opinion, I think he's a top 10 quarterback, and I think he deserves that praise. And for being a smaller dude, he's actually pretty built and pretty durable. So I think the hate he gets is just not fair. And I'm actually a big Kyler Murray fan.
Yeah, I'm also a big Kyler guy. We'll talk about him more when we get into the roster. I think if he misses the whole season, it's going to be hard not to take Caleb Williams. But if he does come back and he looks good, then I think he'll be back. And with that, we'll get into the notable offseason additions for the Cardinals, who really most of their additions were just through the draft. They had a really good draft, despite what anyone says about this team's current roster state. They have some fun potential, and I think it'll still be a fun season to watch with their young pieces. They brought in Paris Johnson in the first round, who will start out as a guard and eventually replace DJ Humphries as a left tackle. And I instantly see him being one of the best left tackles in the NFL. I was really high on him as a prospect, and I'm really excited to see him as a left tackle probably in year 2. And then they also added Hilt Froholt to be their starting center. They added Zach Pascal and Michael Wilson through the free agency and the draft to bring some size to the receiver room to replace Hopkins. And then they brought in Kaiser White to follow Jonathan Gannon over as the defensive coordinator. They lost DeAndre Hopkins, J.J. Watt, which is pretty big, to legends, NFL legends, franchise legends, and they also lost Zach Allen and Byron Murphy on the defense as well, which who both were their two best players on defense last year. So it's looking a little rough for the Cardinals.
Like you said earlier, Dan, it's kind of a dumpster fire. It's tough. I mean, I do like the pieces they brought in through the draft, but the losses I feel like almost outweigh, which rarely ever happen, outweigh the pieces they brought in. But I mean, Paris Johnson Jr. is going to be a great left tackle for years to come. I mean, that's such a solid plug and play. Forget about him. Forget about the left tackle position. This dude's going to be great. But I mean, when you say DeAndre Hopkins, Zach Allen, JJ Watt, Byron Murphy, it's just like, damn, that's brutal. That is brutal. I mean, DeAndre Hopkins was kind of a cap, kind of a cap casualty. But I do like the pieces they brought in, but I think, what they lost outweighs, and I feel like they're almost just bound to be worse.
Yep. And with that, we'll get into the roster. And starting with the receiver core, after losing Hopkins, they've got Marquise Brown, Rondell Moore, Greg Dortch, and then they've got Michael Wilson and Zach Pascal. Pascal is their wide receiver 4 types. It's not terrible. It's definitely, I would say it's around the 25th best receiving room in the NFL. It's not the worst, but it's definitely not up into the middle of the pack either. They have Zach Ertz and Trey McBride, who I honestly love. I think Zach Ertz, if you like Dalton Kincaid, you have to like Zach Ertz. Zach Ertz is pretty much just Dalton Kincaid right now. Trey McBride has a lot of potential behind him as well. I really liked him as a prospect, and he showed flashes at the end of the year. The biggest problem, really, is when Kyler Murray will be back. No one really knows. It could be week 3. It could be literally next year. No one knows. I am starting to feel like we won't see him for at least definitely the first half of the season, and if it's going as bad as we think it will with Colt McCoy as quarterback, I don't really see the use of putting Kyler back out there. Might as well just get the first overall pick, but I guess it'll be interesting to see when Kyler comes back. But with Colt McCoy starting, that is the worst starting quarterback in the NFL, so that it's just going to be hard to win. James Conner is a really fun running back. He's going to be really productive in both the running and the receiving game, so I like James Conner. They paid him. Corey Clement and Keontae Ingram are good. Keontae Ingram's a really athletic player. He fits a scheme well. And then on the offensive line, DJ Humphries will be the left tackle. Paris Johnson will probably move over next year. So Paris Johnson's going to start at left guard. And then they got Froholt coming over. And then Will Hernandez at right guard, who was really good last year, actually. And then they've got Kelvin Beachum starting at right tackle. So how do you like that offense?
It all starts up with Colt McCoy. And as long as he's starting, it's going to be a disaster. And, you don't feel like these guys have very high upside with Colt McCoy. I mean, I do like, Hollywood Brown, and I do like the addition of Michael Wilson. I think he was a very underrated prospect, who kind of shot up draft boards with an outstanding Senior Bowl. And I do feel like he has the potential to be something pretty good, maybe a year or 2 down the road. And then Rondell Morris, kind of a little bit of a disappointment, but I still think he's having some growing pains and can grow into be something a little bit better. Paris Johnson Jr. and DJ Humphries, it's not a bad tackle duo. I actually kind of like that. And then, with Zach Ertz and Trey McBride, that's not bad at all. So, I mean, but their offense as a whole is just going to be capped at a limit of Colt McCoy. So that's what kind of hurts it. I feel like they're going to rely on James Conner a lot, run the ball a ton, but I just don't feel like there's much upside. And, it's until Kyler's back. And hopefully, Kyler got injured late in the year, and it's a pretty big injury. So we'll see. I mean, and if they decide to move off of Kyler Murray, I think it'll all depend too on what trade compensation they can get back from him. I don't think they're just going to move on from him for nothing. For a guy like Caleb Williams, who just eerily reminds me of the same player, but we'll see. We'll see. I still think Kyler Murray has so much potential, and I'd still love to see him grow into that offense.
Yeah, we both had Kyler Murray in our top 10 and our top 10 quarterback rankings, and I stated that he's probably the most underrated player in the NFL right now because he just has a weird narrative surrounding him, but he is a really good quarterback when he's out there, and I do want to see him out there ASAP healthy because he's electric to watch. And something that's not electric is his defense. I'll try to talk about this. They brought LJ Collier over from Seattle, a division rival. I'm not going to mention their interior defensive line. you don't want to hear it. Their edge rushers are Myjai Sanders, Cameron Thomas, and BJ Ojolari, who are three players that I actually liked coming out in the draft, and I think those are three good picks. And I think between the three of them, two of them will be really good starters eventually. Um, they're saying that Zaven Collins will move to edge as well, but when you look at their inside linebackers, if Zaven Collins moved to edge, it would be Kaiser White and Owen Papo. I don't think Owen Papo can be starting in the NFL in 2023. It's just a complete disaster waiting to happen. I liked him as a late round flyer, but not to start as a rookie. That would be a disaster. And then the secondary, their safety duo is really, really good. I'll give them that. Buda Baker and Jalen Thompson's honestly one of the better safety duos. But the corner room, Antonio Hamilton, Marco Wilson, and then they got Isaiah Simmons playing slot is pretty interesting. I will say I love the rookie class, and they brought in two rookie corners that can start day one, in my opinion, and be really good. And that's Garrett Williams and Keitrell Clark. So hopefully they start sooner rather than later, and they get the younger guys some experience.
Yeah, that whole defensive front is not good. It's not pretty. Gosh, it is just an absolute disaster class right there. But BJ Ojolari, he's actually a prospect, younger brother of the Giants, Aziz Ojolari, who I think will have some upside down the road. And a huge addition that they did bring in that can't be talked about enough is a Kaiser White. He's an ultra great coverage run linebacker, kind of does it all. He's that hybrid safety, new modern type of linebacker, which I really like. And then, as you mentioned a little bit, Garrett Williams. I thought he was an absolute steal. I think the sooner he's able to get on the field and start, that's gonna bump their secondary substantially. And then Marco Wilson and Buda Baker. And Antonio Hamilton. I don't hate their secondary by any means. I really do like Buda Baker. I have a weird feeling that Buda Baker will be traded though, or there's rumors and talks about him potentially being cut. But what do you think about him being traded before the offseason?
Yeah, there's definitely been rumors circulating that Buda Baker has wanted to trade. It looks like it honestly, nothing's really surfaced. I don't know if they have gotten the best offers, and I don't think you want to trade someone like Buda Baker for nothing. So it looks like he's going to report to training camp and everything's good, and he's just going to play. I could see him being a midseason trade for sure, though, if things are a disaster and he just wants to go to a contender. I could easily see him going to like the Eagles or something midseason. That'd be unfair.
For sure. And then Isaiah Simmons, the transition to nickelback DB safety. I don't know how much I like that. He's kind of a big, lengthy, fast guy, but I don't know. I don't know if he's got the hips. I don't know if he could do it. It's interesting to me. He is an athlete. He's an athlete. I'll give him that. But it just kind of seems like him playing linebacker didn't work out. So they're just trying to throw him at safety and see what happens.
Yeah, they're definitely doing a lot of experimenting with their first round picks, which is never a great thing for the ex front office, I guess. So it's a clean slate with their good draft this year. But we'll move on to the Rams, who are a team with a lot of turnover this offseason. They have 36 rookies on their roster, and you didn't hear that wrong, that they have 36 rookies on their roster. When we get into their offseason additions, it's pretty much just rookies. They added Steve Avila in the second round, who was a really good guard for TCU, and he's going to start for them day one if he's healthy and be really solid and probably their best interior offensive lineman. And then they brought in Puka Nacua, who is a player that I really liked at BYU. He could just never stay healthy. He went to the Senior Bowl and was a star of the Senior Bowl the first few days, and then he got hurt there as well. So injuries have always been his Achilles heel, literally. But he just reminds me of a Robert Woods clone when I watch him. And I don't know if you remember back in those Cooper Kupp prime days, but him and Robert Woods were a great duo, and they fed Robert Woods in the backfield sweeps, and they put him at running back even. And I think they can do that exact same thing with Puka Nacua. He's a really fun player with the ball in his hands, and I think he's going to be a really good intermediate receiver for the Rams, and starting very soon.
Yeah, I really like. I know there's not a lot to talk about with this Rams, and adding any veterans or anything. But yeah, Steve Avila, very underrated. I thought he was one of the most scheme prospect, one of the most scheme proof, best guards, who could play all over the line. And so I thought that was a really big addition that's going to, help them a lot in the interior spot. And then, yeah, Puka Nacua is an exciting guy. I mean, he's a later round pick, but he is a very good intermediate guy who I think will fit the Rams and Sean McVay's system very well. And I could see him earning a starting role there very fast. Because I mean, it's all up for grabs with 36 rookies on the roster. It's nuts. So I mean, that whole team, it's been a straight dumpster fire ever since they went all in. And good for them. They went all in, won the Super Bowl 2 years ago, and it worked. But now you're seeing the aftermath of what going all in can look like. I mean, when you spend every possible dollar that you have for for futures to come, and this is what your team looks like, 36. I mean, how many of those rookies are undrafted?
A lot. A lot.
So
But even
like
then, they had like 12
like
draft picks too. So
yeah, and they were mostly all later round. I mean, they were later picks, but I mean, it just shows you. I mean, what they did, it paid off miraculously. It worked. So props to them. But yeah, we're gonna see the Rams in a little bit of a tough situation for the next few years, and I think their upside is only so limited because I mean their roster is not going to be very good for probably the next while. I'd say the next 5 to 6 years possibly.
yeah, definitely did pay off getting that Super Bowl win. But as you'll see with these notable losses, it definitely did come at a cost. They lost Jalen Ramsey this offseason, which was a huge trade, a huge loss. Obviously, you're losing a top 3 to 5 corner every year. They lost Bobby Wagner in the middle of that defense, which, as you'll see, is a big loss because they did not replace him. They lost Leonard Floyd as well on the edge, Greg Gaines to Tampa, and then they also lost Allen Robinson. Not too big of a loss the way he played. We'll get into the Rams roster, and they've got Ben Skronik, Van Jefferson, Puka Nacua, Tutu Atwell, and Demarcus Robinson all complimenting the great Cooper Kupp. And then they've got Matthew Stafford coming back, another Georgia boy, Stetson Bennett backing him up. They got Cam Akers, Kyron Williams, and then the TCU running back, or ex-TCU running back, now Ole Miss running back, Zach Evans. And then the offensive line it's all right. They got Joe Noteboom, Steve Avila, Brian Allen, Logan Bruce, and Rob Havenstein. That it's not a terrible 5, but when you look at the depth, it's the worst depth in the NFL. And if there's one injury there, their season's pretty much over, and Matthew Stafford won't be able to stay healthy. And then they got Tyler Higbee and Hunter Long, who came over in that Ramsey trade, and then Davis Allen, who was honestly a pretty good pick. So there's pieces here. There's some fun young guys, but Matthew Stafford will definitely have to just feed Cooper Kupp like he did that Super Bowl season if they want to have any success.
Yeah, it looks like I want to throw the ball 60 times to Cooper Kupp a game. So I'm feeling right now, and that's how confident I am in this offense. I don't like it. I don't think it's good. I think, yeah, like you said, and then depth, if one person gets hurt, if Cooper Kupp gets hurt, if Matthew Stafford gets hurt, if one, Rob Havenstein gets hurt, I mean, you have no depth. You have no pieces to plug them in and to, even get decent play. So, I mean, it is just one of the most thin, weakest offenses, I think, in the entire NFL. And I think it all revolves around the great Cooper Kupp, and teams are going to be able to key in on Cooper Kupp. I mean, I don't know if they'll be able to stop him because Cooper Kupp is just different, but yeah, I want to feed Cooper Kupp as much as I can if I'm Matthew Stafford, and I want to get the ball out of my hands fast because I'm not confident in this offense at all.
Yeah, very, very thin group, and that's not a good mesh when you consider that your two really only good established players, Cooper Kupp and Matthew Stafford, are very injury prone the last few years. So I really hope they stay healthy. That's their only chance. What did you think about that Stetson Bennett pick?
It's kind of interesting. Kind of made me laugh. Who knows? Maybe. I mean, Stetson Bennett. I mean, can't say he wasn't good at Georgia. I mean, he was in an overpowered offense, but I mean, he is somewhat athletic. He is old. I mean, he's like older than freaking Jalen Hurts. But it's interesting. It kind of makes me laugh, but it would be interesting to see him play because I think he could come in and be a fine game manager. I do.
Yeah, I think he'll really buy in being behind Matthew Stafford, a Georgia legend, and I think he'll be a good mentor for him. He'll probably play pretty soon as well. I don't really see Stafford staying healthy the whole season, if I'm being honest. And I think Cam Akers will have a good fantasy season if you guys are looking for some fantasy insight. I think he'll be decent. Him and Dobbins are both kind of being overlooked because of past injuries that they're healthy from now. So we'll get into the defense, and I'm going to be honest. There's one good player on this defense, and it's Aaron Donald. And if he's not there, this is
Look at their starters and look how many household names there are.
it is
If you're a
crazy.
casual, you look at this and you're like, I know Aaron Donald. I know who Aaron Donald is.
It is crazy. Their defensive line is literally Aaron Donald and some rookies like Kobe Turner was a fun rookie. Byron Young was a pretty good edge pick. They don't have any other edges other than Byron Young, which is crazy. By far the worst edge group in the NFL. I'm not trying to just completely.
Who's Russ Yeast? 7th round.
Man, their inside linebacking group. Like I said, they didn't replace Bobby Wagner. They got Ernest Jones, who was actually pretty good, but then they've got Christian Roseboom as their other middle linebacker.
This is bad. I never
because they couldn't bring back Bobby Wagner. And then you get into the secondary. They brought in Akello Witherspoon, who had a pretty terrible season in Pittsburgh last year. So they brought in here for nothing. They got Darian Kendrick, who was a 6th-round pick last year, who could be good. But as your starting outside corner, that's a little scary. And then in the nickel, they've got Kobe Durant and THT from TCU competing. And that's their corner room. And then their safeties are Jordan Fuller, who's really solid safety, and then Russ Yeast and Quentin Lake are going to be battling it out for that other starting safety spot. So opposing off.
Man. I almost feel bad. Man. I didn't realize it was bad, but this is a disaster. Holy
It's comical. I've never laughed this hard doing a podcast. It's hilarious, but I mean, hopefully all these young players coming in, as you can see, all these green names are all rookies. So they've got a lot of players that could maybe surprise. Hopefully, Byron Young is the highest upside rookie on this list, though. So it's rough, man. It's a rebuild.
Oh my gosh, Russ Yeast. Prove me wrong. Prove me wrong. This is. I can't even look at this defense and honestly take it seriously. I almost feel bad. I mean, this is pathetic. I mean, your defense revolves around Aaron Donald and I can't believe Aaron Donald didn't just retire after looking at this defense. I mean, who knows? He's going to go out to training camp next week and be like, this is pathetic. I've never seen anything so bad in my life. But man, I mean, maybe, they have a lot of rookies, so maybe they'll hit on a few and, they'll be good. But I do like Travius Hodges Tomlinson, the legend LT's nephew going over there to LA. Which is kind of cool. I think he'll be a fine slot corner in the NFL. But yeah, I mean, this roster it's hard to look at. I mean, Christian Roseboom, Akello Witherspoon, Jordan Fuller, Russ Yeast.
They got Michael Hoyt is another edge rusher alongside Byron Young as their starters.
Gosh, I'll be honest. I don't know too much about any of these guys.
It's rough, man.
Pathetic. It's bad. It's bad looking at this. It's just I feel bad for Aaron Donald that his career is going to have to be ended on a sour note like this. Hopefully, I want him to get traded. Free Aaron Donald. That's free Aaron Donald from this, please.
Yeah, that's the thing. If he gets hurt, then this is just the worst defensive group that's ever been fielded in NFL history. I don't want to laugh too much at this defense. Let's just move on to the next team.
Yeah,
the Seattle Seahawks. Who are just a completely different vibe. They were expected to be like a 2-win team last year, and they went and made the playoffs and surprised everyone. And their offense was great with Geno Smith coming over. I expect Geno to do the same. And then when you look into their offseason additions, they had a pretty exciting free agency, and they always have a great draft with John Snyder. So they brought in big money defensive lineman Draymond Jones from the Broncos. They brought over Seahawks legend Bobby Wagner. I did a pretty good Photoshop in that picture. And then they got Julian Love as their third safety, just in case Jamal Adams isn't fully healthy. And I love Julian Love. And then they got Jackson Smith and Jigba, obviously, as their slot receiver who will just completely open up that offense and complete their wide receiver core. And really excited to see how that offense does. And then they lost Rashad Penny, who's not too big of a loss when you consider they brought in rookie running back Zach Charbonnet, and they also lost Shelby Harris and Cody Barton, but they also replaced them as well. So not too big of a deal.
Yeah, I actually really like what the Seahawks are building. Every year they kind of impress me on the way they've done their maneuvers and how they've done it. I mean, what they were able to get from, sorry, Dan, your Broncos, and then replace his, giving Russell Wilson and getting essentially a whole load full of stuff, and then replacing him with Geno Smith, who did play better last year. So I mean, I really like that they went and got Draymond Jones. That's a very underrated, huge addition. And like last year, they went and got Uchenna Nwosu, and I think they're building, a very underrated, slept-on team. And then Bobby Wagner going back and re-signing with the Seahawks. I mean, he went over to the arch rival Rams, and you know, during one of their worst seasons ever, because he thought they were going to be something special. And he's like, nope, let me go back to the Seahawks because they're building something a lot better. Should have just stayed there. So, I mean, he did a 1-year stint somewhere else. It didn't work. He's coming back, but they're building something special. And they have, one of the best wide receiver trios, adding Jackson Smith and Jigba this year. And I'm for it. I'm excited. They got a very good, 2 bell cow running backs, running back by committee, with freaking Kenneth Walker, and then bringing in rookie running back Zach Charbonnet. It's gonna be fun. It's gonna be fun. And I think the sky's the limit for this team. I think it just all falls on Geno and how well he plays.
Yeah, this roster is just built so beautifully. It's honestly just perfect. We'll get into the roster, and we'll start with this really perfect receiver trio: DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, Jackson Smith, and Jigba. And they also have D. Eskridge as a wide receiver 4 who could do some things. Their offensive line is Charles Cross, Damian Lewis, Evan Brown, Phil Haynes, and Abraham Lucas, which outside of the tackle duo, the interior isn't too exciting, but they did bring in 2 good interior rookies, Olu Aluatimi and Anthony Bradford. I liked them both as prospects, so I think their offensive line will be just fine. They got Geno Smith, who we mentioned was fantastic coming over last year. I don't see him having any regression. He just got paid a bag, and he's got more weapons. They got Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet, which is going to be one of the nastier running back duos in the NFL. They complement each other really well. Zach Charbonnet is a great receiver. And Kenny McIntosh, who they also got as one of the steals of the draft. He was a top 3 receiving back behind Bijan and Jahmyr Gibbs in this draft, and no one really talked about that. So I like this offense a lot.
No, I love it. I think, last year they needed 2 tackles, and they hit on 2 tackles in the draft. I mean, with getting Charles Cross and Abraham Lucas was awesome. I mean, 2 guys that immediately started and contributed and should only improve. I really like the interior, and then just a flawless wide receiver trio. It's just going to be so much upside and so fun to watch this year. And then, yeah, I mean, there's really no holes. There's nothing to complain about. Schneider and Pete Carroll have really done a really good job at building this offense, and it's going to be something special. And I even like the way they did Geno's contract. I mean, if he doesn't play good this year, they do have an out, next year. So it's looking really good. And I think it's just, to me, yeah. And if Geno plays the way he did and improves, this team can go far. They're serious playoff contenders.
Yeah, I mean, these 3 receivers just complement each other so perfectly. You have Tyler Lockett with coming down with any contested deep ball, over the shoulder ball. He's going to come down with it all. DK Metcalf will be your number 1 receiver. You throw it up to him in any given chance, the 70-30 chance, and he'll come down with it. And then Jackson Smith and Jigba over the middle, intermediate slants, take him to the house. Just the whole field will be covered up with those receivers. It's going to be so hard for defenses, and Geno's going to have a lot of fun spreading it around to them. We'll get into the defense, which has also been very massively improved the last few years. They brought in Draymond Jones, obviously. They got Cameron Young in the draft, who I think could be their starting nose tackle. He's really good. They brought Jerron Reed back, who had a few years at the Packers, but he is a Seahawk at heart. Their inside linebackers are really good with Jordan Brooks, Bobby Wagner, and even Devin Bush as their LB3. But Bobby Wagner coming back alongside Jordan Brooks is awesome. Their edge rushers are really fun to me. As you mentioned, Uchenna Nwosu was so good last year coming over from LA. He was just really surprising me. He broke out in a new scheme, new situation, which is really hard to do. Daryl Taylor's good, and then they have 2 really good high upside backup edges, Boye Mafe and Derek Hall. And then when you get into the secondary, this is what really excites me. I won't call it the best secondary yet, but it will be very, very soon, and it's going to be the most physical secondary. Every receiving group is going to spend a lot of time in the cold tub after playing against the Seahawks. You got Devon Witherspoon and Tariq Woolen on the outside. It's just impossible to throw against. As young as they are, it's just impossible. And Kobe Bryant in the slot, which is really fun. Jamal Adams and Quandre Diggs as a safety duo, and then Julian Love to be the third guy, just in case Jamal Adams isn't quite ready. I love that trio. I don't really see any weak spots on this awesome defense.
Yeah, this is depth. This is great starters. This is solid, and this is not overpaying for people and just building a solid team. And they've done it. I mean, every single position group just really impresses me how the Seahawks have gone about this and building this team. But I mean, yeah, I mean, just starting up front with Draymond Jones, and then the rookie bringing in Cameron Young is just so underrated. And then going to your edge rushers, I mean, Derek Hall is a backup, and Boye Mafe, who never really got going last year, but does have tremendous upside, is awesome. And bringing Bobby Wagner back, the Hall of Fame linebacker, and I honestly forgot they got Devin Bush. Was that this year?
Yeah,
I totally blanked that.
yeah, he was
Devin
kind of
Bush
a
is.
struggle in Pittsburgh last year, and they brought him over to be their LB3. You'll definitely take that.
Oh yeah, 100%. A guy who's very fast and has good coverage upside. Maybe he'll flourish in a new system. But I mean, and then Jamal Adams, Julian Love, and then the two studded defensive backs. I mean, Tariq Woolen, and then gosh, freaking, my mind just blanked. What's his name? The guy they
Devon
drafted.
Witherspoon.
Yeah, Devon Witherspoon. Yeah, like you said, this is going to be the best corner duo here in the next coming years, and these guys are exciting. And man, what a solid defense and what a solid offense and just all around depth. And you feel really confident in the Seahawks this year to make a splash.
Yeah, absolutely love the way John Snyder's gone about building this team. There's really very few holes on this team. And we'll go into the 49ers, who finished first in the division last year. A really exciting team, but they're definitely not a completely perfect team by any means. I think they do have their flaws. I think they had a pretty flawed draft, but their amazing coaching staff and talent, star talent, definitely makes up for any of their flaws. We'll get into their offseason additions. They spent their big money on Javon Hargrave, who was just fantastic for the Eagles last year. They spent pretty much all their money on Javon Hargrave. And then they brought in Sam Darnold just as insurance in case Purdy isn't ready. But I'm just gonna say it here right now. I'm pretty positive Purdy's gonna be ready week 1. He's gonna be playing week 1. So just keep that in the back of your mind. But even if not, they have Sam Darnold and Trey Lance. So if they have to ride with those two for a few weeks, that's one of the better backup situations. They brought in John Feliciano to complete for their center job, and then they also brought in Clelin Ferrell from the Raiders, who's a really good run defender, and that's about it. But they did lose some D linemen, like Charles Amenahu and Samson at Ebukam. Amenahu was great last year, and they lost him to the Chiefs, of course, and Ebukam is going to be really good for the Colts. They lost their quarterback, Jimmy G. Not too big of a deal because Purdy's better. And then their biggest loss, in my opinion, was Mike McGlinchey, because they didn't replace him, and that's one of their biggest question marks, as you'll see on the roster.
Yeah, they definitely didn't have a lot of money nor draft capital to really replace any of what they lost. But I mean, getting Javon Hargrave was an absolute. I mean, to add to a defensive line that's already one of the best defensive lines in the NFL, top 3, making it even better is awesome. Javon Hargrave was such a stud, and he's going to just thrive in that defensive front with, Nick Bosa. It's going to be crazy. And then, yeah, like you said, Mike McGlinchey is the biggest loss because they didn't replace him. They didn't really have anyone to replace him. So, I mean, that is definitely their biggest loss. But, yeah, it'll be interesting. I mean, they lose Jimmy Garoppolo. So what? Brock Purdy is a lot better, and then they still have Trey Lance, and they brought in Darnold for insurance. So I mean, it's a interesting. The 49ers always roster a lot of quarterbacks. They always have a lot of quarterbacks get injured. It always seems like they did the 3 quarterback rule this year because of the playoff game where every single person got hurt on the 49ers, their quarterbacks, which is sad. But it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting. But I do love the addition of Javon Hargrave. That excites me.
Yep. And with that, we'll get into the roster. They got Brandon Ayuk, Deebo Samuel, and Jawan Jennings, which is a pretty fun receiver trio that all complement each other well. And Brock Purdy trusted them all last year. The depth is a little questionable. I don't love it. I think their 7th round pick, Ronnie Bell, has a real chance of making this team and having an impact. Their offensive line outside of Trent Williams is, like I said earlier, a question mark. Trent Williams is the best lineman in the NFL, so he'll make up for some of it. But Aaron Banks, Jake Brendel, Spencer Burford, and then Colton McKivitz, the 5th round pick in 2020 to replace Mike McGlinchey, is a very big question mark. You never know. They have a good offensive line culture. They have good coaching, so he could definitely step in and be good. Aaron Banks was really good last year. Spencer Burford was on and off as a rookie, but I don't mind him as a starter. And then Jake Brendel and John Feliciano are in the center competition. But yeah, Colton McKivitz just scares me really.
Yeah, 100%. But I mean this offense I do really like, and as long as it's being coached by Kyle Shanahan, I'm always gonna like it. It doesn't really matter who's on the roster, unless it looks like the Rams, then I might have different feelings. But if as long as it's just an NFL roster that doesn't look bad, Kyle Shanahan's gonna do his thing. One of the offensive gurus of our generation. He's completely changed football. The dude is just so amazing, and he does his work. It doesn't matter who's playing quarterback for him; they're going to put up, and they're always going to be contenders in whatever game they're in. But bringing in Christian McCaffrey last year was very underrated. I mean, he fits that Shanahan offense so well. I mean, the dudes can play all over the field. I mean, he's one of their best receivers. He can run the ball. They just scheme it up so perfectly to him. And yeah, I mean, very, very star-studded with Trent Williams, who's the best lineman in the NFL. I don't care what you say. This dude is an absolute mauler. He shows up every single year, and he's like in his third. I don't even know how old he is, but it doesn't matter because he doesn't slow down. But overall, they're a pretty solid offense. I do like the receiver room with Ayuk and Debo Samuel and Juwan Jennings. It just always feels pretty solid. It just feels like they're going to be in every game with this roster, and their offensive line's always just kind of solid. I just think I do like Purdy. I think Purdy's a good quarterback, but if they did have, say this team traded for Kyler Murray or something next year, I mean, I couldn't imagine how good they could be with a quarterback like that.
Yeah, I really love their run game with Kittle and Kyle Juszczyk, the best fullback in the NFL, and then McCaffrey just completely changed this team last year. And Elijah Mitchell is one of the best backups, and he really does take the load off McCaffrey, and he's really good in doing so.
Yeah, awesome offense. So excited to see the 49ers this year.
And with that, we'll get into the Niners defense, which is just absolutely dominant, starting with the defensive line, starting with the Nick Bosa, Javon Hargrave, the big money signing, Eric Armstead, and Drake Jackson, with Javon Kinlaw and Clelin Ferrell off the bench as well. That's an incredible defensive line. Kerry Hyder as well was great last year. I love that front four. I think that's one of the best starting defensive lines in the NFL. They've got the awesome duo of Dre Greenlaw and Fred Warner. In my opinion, that might be the best linebacker duo in the NFL because they have the best linebacker in the NFL, Fred Warner. No question, he's the best linebacker in the NFL right now. He has that crown. He's had it for a few years now. When you get into their secondary, they've got Lenore, Charvarius Ward, and then Isaiah Oliver in the slot. They also have Daryl Luter, who I did like that pick, but he is starting the season off the PUP, so I don't know quite when he'll be back, but I think he can start over Lenore pretty soon. They have a pretty solid safety duo, Talanoa Hufanga and Deshaun Gibson, who both played really good last year. So great defense. I will say I am interested to see if they take a step down without D'Amico Ryans, because his scheme was incredible. That defensive line was literally just a bunch of Tasmanian devils. Their stunts were crazy. They were doing some stunts that the NFL's never seen before. So they were just really confusing the offensive line, the offensive lines. And I think D'Amico Ryans was a huge part of that. But the talent on this defense is too good not for it to be top 5 again.
Oh, 100%. They're just so star-studded. It's just crazy. Looking at that defensive front, no offense is going to want to go up against that because they're going to get after you. I mean, and like I said, Javon Hargrave is just such a good addition. Adding him to Nick Bosa, Eric Armstead, that's ridiculous. And just all over. I mean, there's really no weak spots. I mean, Charvarius Ward came in, was one of the best corners in the entire league, in my opinion, last year, and just came in that 49ers defense and just, he was awesome. And then Hufanga out of nowhere, Hufanga was awesome. He was like the Tasmanian devil. He was like a Troy Polamalu.
Mm-hmm.
It was fun watching him. And even Lenore was also a very slept on corner out of Oregon who was very good. But again, yeah, this defense, sky's the limit for him just because the talent's there. So it's going to be interesting. It does hurt losing to D'Amico Ryans, who's that guru, but the talent's all there.
Yeah, and I did say I didn't love their draft, but one pick I didn't mind. I didn't love it, but I didn't mind it. Was Jair Brown, just because in this defense, I can see him eventually replacing Gibson and being a really good complement to Hufanga, and I could definitely see Jair Brown being a good starter in this defense.
Oh yeah, Jair Brown will fit into this 49ers defense, and he's kind of a ball hawk in my opinion. Coming out of Penn State, he's a stud, and he was kind of all over the board, and he was a very underrated player. I felt like he could have gone, a little bit higher in the third round, but he'll come in there and he'll definitely fight for a starting position there pretty quick.
Yeah. Overall, great defense that's going to be highlighted by Nick Bosa and their big signing, Javon Hargrave, who was great last year, and Eric Armstead, who's one of the best interior defensive linemen. So, with that, we'll get into our division predictions. That should be a fun one. And let's hear your division MVP / defensive player of the year, since we both have a defensive player for this one.
Yeah. Pretty obvious choice here. It's going to be Mr. Nick Bosa. And this dude is just probably going to put up 20 sacks like he does every year. He's all over the field. He's the best player in that division, and there's just no change in my mind. This guy is just built different, and it's sad to say, he's probably better than his bigger brother Joey, which is on my Chargers. But Nick Bosa is just a different kind of defensive end, and he's got to be. I mean, he's gonna put up anywhere from 15 to 20 sacks with 10 tackles, another 10 tackles for loss, and 50 run stops. I mean, this dude is just all over the field, and he's only going to get better with Javon Hargrave. So it's an easy choice for me.
Yeah, I mean, going over that defensive roster and that defensive line, just you can't really double team anyone. So he's just going to be absolutely eating. And I think that the Niners are going to be so good that he's kind of just going to be in the spotlight for this award. And I'm going to go Nick Bosa as well. I feel like it's kind of too easy. I just think the Niners will be too good, and Bosa will be, if not the biggest reason for their success, he'll be a massive reason. And the guy is just so dominant. He's such a great pass rusher. You said he might be a little bit better than Joey Bosa, but that's not really much of a slouch considering he's probably the best edge rusher in the NFL right now. So Nick Bosa is just a monster, and we have him as both of our NFC West division MVP, but he could really go get at least the defensive player of the year in the league. I don't know about the MVP, but he's just a monster.
Oh, 100%. I love Nick Bosa. It's just he's so unstoppable, and that defensive line just makes it even better. So it's awesome.
Let's hear your offensive player of the year for the NFC West.
So my offensive player is going to be a guy from the Rams who I talked a bunch of crap on, but it's going to be Mr. Cooper Kupp. And why I think he'll be the offensive player of the year is just he's the heart and soul of that offense. It's all going to revolve around him, and it has to. I mean, this guy's probably going to get targeted 15 times a game at least, in my opinion. So I think we could see another 1,500 plus yard and 15 touchdowns from Cooper Kupp, because I mean the ball is going to constantly be his hand. He's that offense, and bearing any injuries, if Cooper Kupp is able to stay healthy, he will win this award, in my opinion.
Yeah, if him and Stafford can return to their form and their chemistry, I mean, he is just so productive, and they have a pretty incredible, it's almost weird connection. Like every single drive, he finds Cooper Kupp for it's like every play, honestly. I don't think he looks at any other receiver. It's just weird how much they love each other, and they have a really, really good connection. And hopefully they're healthy, because that's all it really relies on. And I'm going to go a different route. I'm going to go Christian McCaffrey. He's just a complete game changer for the Niners. As you can see, I have high hopes for the Niners, high expectations. And when he came over last year, he completely changed their running game. It was honestly one of the worst run games in the NFL until McCaffrey came over, and he made it instantly, if not the best run game in the NFL. Really, really high up there. He was just such an electric player. He's a great receiver. His dad was a receiver in the NFL. He's just a absolute beast. He's a freak, and I hope he stays healthy, because I think he could win offensive player of the year this year if he does. And
100%. Christian McCaffrey is just one of the best offensive players ever, in my opinion. This dude does it all. I mean, it's so fun watching him go over from Carolina to San Francisco and hit the triple crown in his second game. So like a week of practice. And yeah, it was evident in, what he was able to contribute to that team and what firepower he brought over. So big year coming from Christian McCaffrey. It's going to be exciting to watch these two.
Yeah, let's hear your offensive rookie of the year for the NFC West.
So my offensive rookie feels like there's only one obvious choice, because there's only one player really I feel like you're going to win this. It's going to be Mr. Jackson Smith and Jigba. And I think he actually has a fairly good chance at being, pretty productive this year. As I was saying, coming in, if you watch some of our draft episodes from a couple months ago, I was saying Jackson Smith and Jigba feels like the only receiver that can truly be a 100 catch receiver or possession receiver, who's going to go out there and get a lot of targets. I felt like that kind of dropped off when I found out he's going to the Seahawks and he had DK and Tyler Lockett. But I feel like the NFL, with how much we throw the ball, and how much 3 wide receiver sets, that Jackson Smith and Jigba is going to get his. So I mean, he's going to get his production, he's going to get his targets, and he's just the obvious. There's really no other choice in this division in this division for offense rookie of the year.
Yep, I'm gonna go Jackson Smith and Jigba as well. It feels like the only option. He's just a perfect fit in Seattle. We've talked about it all episode. That receiving core is gonna be really, really just completed with Jackson Smith and Jigba, and I think he can be very productive in the offense, even with 2 really good receivers. I think that their offense will be good enough for that. All 3 of them to be really productive, and I could see Jackson Smith and Jigba end up maybe being the most productive one because he's going to be used in the intermediate game the most, and that's something the Seahawks offense has been trying to get. They haven't had a good slot for so long, and they haven't had someone they can just throw a slant to and take it 70 yards to the house like JSN will do. So really excited to see him in his rookie year. I wanted to shout out 2 other receiving options that are in this division, Michael Wilson and Puka Nacua, who we've talked about. They're just not in quite as good of a situation as JSN. No one really is, but they're both really good too.
100%. And then my defensive rookie of the year, I'm going to go a little bit different guy. Most people won't be expecting, but BJ Ojolari.
Oh, wow.
I think I like him to win this award because I feel like this award is very based off of stats, and I feel like sacks are easier to get than say interceptions. And so BJ Ojolari is going to go into a system with Jonathan Gannon, who was with the Eagles, who set the sack record last year, and I think he's going to have his chance to to eat a little bit, and I think he could get a few sacks, and I think he'd be worthy of this award. And if he's a 5+ sack guy, I think that's a win, and I think he could definitely be that kind of player.
Yeah, I really loved him as a prospect. I could see a world where he does become a starter and ends up becoming their most productive pass rusher as a rookie, which is crazy. It says a lot about the state of that roster right now. But he really was a good prospect. I wouldn't have been surprised to see him go in the first round. I liked a lot about him, and he has every pass rush move in the bag. So I like that pick. I'm going to go with Devon Witherspoon just because this one as well just feels a little obvious when you consider how good Seahawks rookies are. They always hit on their rookies. They always play them. They always play them well, especially, I mean, come on, when you consider him alongside Tariq Woolen on the opposite side of him, that secondary will just be nasty, physical, up in people's faces. I think Witherspoon could finish the season as a top 10 corner in the NFL as a rookie. And I think Tariq Woolen was a top 10 corner in the NFL this year, and I think he will be as well next year. So that corner duo, that secondary is going to be so good. I think it's going to be Legion of Boom vibes. The national media is going to love it a lot, and I think there's going to be a lot of spotlight on Witherspoon. So I got to go him.
Yeah, I love that pick. It does feel like the obvious pick. Witherspoon is just such a dog, and he's going to go out there and get a play next to Tariq Woolen in his rookie season with that just flawless defense, in my opinion. But yeah, I absolutely love that, and I'm so excited to see the Seahawks this year.
All right. And then the moment you've all been waiting for. Who is your division winner for the NFC West in 2023?
As much as I've been hyping up the Seahawks this podcast, I have to go 49ers. Feels like too obvious of a pick to me. They're going to go out there. As long as they have Kyle Shanahan, I think they're going to win this division, kind of like an Andy Reid with the Chiefs. Just feels like these guys are just on a different level of guru and knowing how to win games. I mean, that's just what they do. They win games. They know how to win games. And as long as Kyle Shanahan's there, they're going to be my pick.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, can't really argue with that. I wanted to pick the Seahawks as well. I was hoping you would, but I have the San Francisco 49ers as well. I think the Seahawks will be a game or two out. It's going to be really tight between those two at the top of the NFC West. I just think that with Shanahan coaching them up, with just the pure star power on this 49ers team, when you consider Bosa and just their whole defense, and then McCaffrey and even Ayuk and Debo are just great receivers. And I think Brock Purdy is really complimentary of all those players. And I think he's a really good quarterback. I don't know about like a top 10 quarterback, but I think he's going to be like a top 16 quarterback this year. And And just that system, Kyle Shanahan coaches them up so well, and their defense is going to keep them in every game, and they just have some freaks. And I think the Niners will end up edging out the Seahawks barely.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. And we kind of saw them, play each other last year, and that's just kind of how it feels and probably what will happen. The 49ers are just dominant and they just are too star-studded at the top, and it's going to be hard for the Seahawks to get over that hump. Even though I'd like to see them, even though I really wanted to see them, it just feels like the 49ers are the superior team in this division.
Yeah, the Seahawks are definitely getting closer to that hump because of how good John Snyder's done rebuilding that team. And it's going to be a really fun division. It was really fun talking about all four of these teams. It's a really unbalanced division. But next week, we've got the AFC West, which is going to be a very, very fun one. So thank you guys for tuning into this one. NFL Seekers podcast. Hope you had fun, Josh.
Yes, sir.
All right. Tune in next week. We got a fantasy episode in the AFC West deep dive. So thanks for tuning in. NFL Seekers on all platforms. Peace, guys.
Peace.